The screams from the Karathi homeworld had stopped 3 hours ago. Admiral Vexithara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the last city burn through the massive viewing window. Orange flames danced across the planet's surface like tiny stars against the dark continents. The smell of victory filled the recycled air of the bridge. "Final casualty report, Admiral," said her aide, a young Zeltharian officer with fresh battle scars across his gray skin. His forearms moved quickly across the control panel as data flowed in from the planet below. "Speak," Vexithara commanded. Her own 8-foot frame towered over the bridge crew. Like all Zeltharian nobles, she had been genetically enhanced for warfare. Her muscles were dense as steel cables. Her reflexes faster than any natural creature could achieve. 2 rows of sharp teeth filled her mouth, designed to tear through armor and bone with equal ease. The Karathi military has been completely destroyed. Their planetary defense grid is offline. Population centers have surrendered or been eliminated. Total enemy losses, 47 million. Our losses, 233 apex hunters, 16 support vessels. Vexithara nodded with satisfaction. The numbers were acceptable, even good. The Karathi had been known throughout the galaxy as skilled warriors with advanced technology. Their energy shields could stop most weapons. Their battlesuits could protect a soldier from direct hits from plasma cannons. Yet they had fallen in less than a week. That was the power of the Dominion. That was the strength of the apex hunters. She turned to study the tactical display that showed the entire Karathi system. Red markers indicated destroyed fleets. Yellow showed captured installations. Green marked Dominion forces now in control of everything that mattered. Another species had learned the truth that governed the galaxy. Resistance meant extinction. "Begin the harvesting operations," she ordered. "Take their technology, their resources, their strongest survivors for the breeding programs. Leave nothing useful behind." The Karathi had lasted longer than most. Some species surrendered after seeing just one apex hunter. Others fought for days before accepting their fate. The Karathi had actually managed to kill a few dozen of the Dominion's perfect warriors before falling. That showed courage, if nothing else. The apex hunters were the crown jewel of Zeltharian science. Each one stood 12 feet tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. Their bones were reinforced with metallic compounds. Their muscles had been grown in laboratories to provide maximum strength and speed. Computer implants connected directly to their brains gave them perfect coordination and tactical awareness. Most importantly, they felt no fear, no doubt, no mercy. They had been designed for one purpose: to kill everything that opposed the Dominion. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, they had never failed. "Admiral," called the communications officer from across the bridge. "We are receiving a priority message from the 4th Scout Fleet. They report contact with an unknown species in the Orion Arm." Vexithara's attention shifted from the burning planet to this new development. Unknown species were rare these days. The Dominion had catalogued and conquered most of the galaxy's intelligent life forms. Finding something new was always interesting, especially if they possessed useful technology or genetic traits. "Display their report," she commanded. The main screen changed to show star charts of a distant spiral arm. Red markers indicated the positions of 4th Scout Fleet vessels. A single blue dot marked the location of the contact. Species designation unknown. Technology level: primitive, faster-than-light capability, basic energy weapons, chemical propulsion. Physical characteristics: bipedal mammals, average height 6 feet, no visible natural weapons or armor. Single vessel detected, crew estimated at 200 individuals. Vexithara studied the data with growing amusement. Bipedal mammals with no natural weapons, no armor plating or enhanced physiology. They sounded even weaker than the Frexani, who had surrendered within hours of first contact. "Threat assessment?" she asked. "Negligible, Admiral. The species appears to have no significant military capability. Their vessel shows no advanced shielding or weapon systems. Scout Fleet. Commander requests permission to proceed with standard pacification protocols." Standard protocols meant sending in a single squad of apex hunters to eliminate the crew and capture the vessel for study. It was overkill for most species, but the Dominion preferred overwhelming force to minimize their own casualties. "Denied," Vexithara said after a moment's consideration. The communications officer looked surprised. "I want to observe the species personally. Their vessel is heading toward Dominion space. Let them come to us." "Admiral, our protocols clearly state—" "I know what our protocols state," Vexthara interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. But I am curious about these creatures. They achieved faster-than-light travel, despite their obvious physical limitations. That suggests either remarkable intelligence or remarkable stupidity. Either way, I want to see them for myself before we add them to the archives. The officer quickly returned to his console. No one argued with Admiral Vexithara twice. She turned back to the viewing window, but her thoughts were no longer on the conquered Karathi world. Instead, she found herself wondering about these mysterious bipedal mammals. What drove a species so obviously weak to venture into the darkness between stars? Did they not understand how dangerous the galaxy could be? 3 days later, Vexithara received another report from the 4th Scout Fleet. The unknown vessel had responded to Dominion communication attempts. The aliens called themselves humans and claimed to come from a world called Earth. They spoke of peace, trade, and friendship between species. Vexithara laughed when she heard the recording. Peace and friendship. How naive these humans must be. The galaxy had no room for such childish concepts. There were only predators and prey, conquerors and the conquered. They request permission to meet with Dominion representatives, reported her communications officer. They say they bring greetings from something called the United Colonial Fleet. Grant their request, Vexithara decided. Invite them to dock with the command station in the Xeris system. Tell them we welcome their peaceful intentions. It would be amusing to meet these humans face to face before their species joined the long list of Dominion subjects. Perhaps they would provide some entertainment before the inevitable end. She had grown tired of watching worlds burn without challenge. As her fleet departed the Karathi system, leaving behind a lifeless husk that had once been home to a proud civilization, Vexithara found herself looking forward to this meeting with humanity. She wondered how long they would maintain their talk of peace and friendship when they saw their first apex, Hunter. She suspected it would not be very long at all. The orders went out across the Dominion fleet network. Prepare for first contact with a new species. Follow standard pacification protocols. Show them the might of the Dominion. Make them understand their place in the galaxy's natural order. Admiral Vexithara smiled as she imagined the humans' faces when they realized their mistake. Another species would learn that in the vast darkness of space, there was only one law that mattered. The strong consumed the weak, and the Zeltharian Dominion was the strongest predator the galaxy had ever known. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the observation deck of the Endeavour, watching the massive alien structure grow larger through the reinforced windows. The Dominion space station looked like a giant metal flower with dozens of petals spreading out from a central hub. Each petal was the size of a city block, covered in weapons that could destroy her ship with a single shot. They're certainly not trying to hide their military power, said Commander Park, her second in command. He stood beside her, both hands pressed against the window as he studied the alien station. Those weapon platforms could take out a small fleet. Sarah nodded but tried to remain optimistic. First contact situations were always tense. Many species probably felt the need to display strength as a form of greeting. Humans did the same thing sometimes, showing off their newest warships when meeting other Earth nations. Remember, we're here as explorers and diplomats, she told her crew over the ship's communication system. These people have controlled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They obviously know things we don't. Let's learn from them. The docking process went smoothly. Alien mechanical arms reached out to grab the Endeavour and guide it into a massive bay inside the station. Sarah was impressed by the precision of their technology. The Dominion clearly had engineering skills far beyond anything Earth could produce. As her ship settled into place, Sarah could see dozens of alien workers moving around the docking bay. They looked roughly humanoid but much larger and more muscular. Their gray skin seemed to have a metallic quality, and she could see what looked like technological implants built into their bodies. Boarding party ready, Captain, announced Chief Security Officer Marcus Rodriguez. He had selected a team of 12 crew members to accompany Sarah to the meeting. All of them wore their dress uniforms and carried ceremonial weapons as a sign of respect. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Sarah stepped through first, followed by her diplomatic team. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, and the air carried unfamiliar chemical scents. A delegation of aliens waited for them in the docking bay. The leader stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and rows of sharp teeth visible when she spoke. Her voice came through a translation device that made her words sound cold and mechanical. I am Admiral Vexithara of the Zeltharian Dominion. You have traveled far from your homeworld, humans. Sarah stepped forward and offered a formal bow. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Endeavor. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We hope this will be the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples. The Admiral's expression did not change, but Sarah thought she saw something like amusement in the alien's large eyes. Friendship. Yes, we shall discuss what that means for your species. Please follow me to the conference chamber. They walked through corridors lined with more of those weapon-like decorations. Sarah began to wonder if the Dominion might be more militaristic than she had hoped. Every surface seemed designed for war rather than peace. The conference chamber was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows high above. The walls were covered with what looked like battle trophies, pieces of destroyed ships, alien weapons, and displays that might have been maps of conquered worlds. Please, sit. Admiral Vexithara gestured to chairs that had been sized for humans. Tell me about your Earth. What kind of world produces a species that ventures into space with such limited capabilities? The question seemed odd, but Sarah answered honestly. She described Earth's history, its diverse nations learning to work together, the gradual expansion into space, and humanity's dreams of finding other intelligent life among the stars. You speak of cooperation between different groups, the Admiral said. This is unusual. Most species we encounter are unified under a single strong leader before they achieve space travel. Humans value diversity, Commander Park explained. We believe different perspectives make us stronger. Interesting. The Admiral touched a control on her chair and the chamber's lights dimmed. Images appeared on the walls showing space battles, burning planets, and creatures Sarah didn't recognize. Let me show you how the galaxy actually works. For the next hour, Admiral Vexithara described the Dominion's history. 3,000 years of conquest. Hundreds of species absorbed into their empire, worlds stripped of resources to feed their growing fleets. It was not a story of cooperation and friendship. It was a story of predators and prey. Every species faces the same choice when they meet us, the Admiral concluded. Submit to Dominion rule and live as our subjects, or resist and face extinction. There are no other options. Sarah felt cold spreading through her chest. Admiral, surely there's room in the galaxy for independent species to coexist peacefully. Humanity has no desire for conflict. Humanity's desires are irrelevant, Vexithara replied. You have entered Dominion space. Your fate is no longer your own to decide. The Admiral touched another control and blast doors sealed the conference chamber. Sarah heard her security team reaching for their weapons, but she held up a hand to stop them. 12 humans with pistols could not fight their way out of an alien military station. However, the Admiral continued, I am curious about your species. You achieved faster than light travel despite obvious physical limitations. Before we proceed with standard pacification protocols, I would like to conduct some tests. What kind of tests? Marcus asked, his hand still resting on his weapon. Admiral Vexithara smiled, showing all of her sharp teeth. Combat evaluations. We will see how humans perform against our apex hunters. Think of it as a demonstration of Dominion superiority. Red lights began flashing throughout the chamber. Sarah heard heavy footsteps approaching from multiple directions. The blast doors opened, and things that looked like nightmares stepped into the room. The apex hunters stood 12 feet tall with gray skin like armored plates. Their arms ended in claws that could probably tear through steel. Glowing implants were visible beneath their skin, and their eyes showed no emotion at all. These are perfect warriors, Admiral Vexithara announced proudly. Genetically engineered for combat, enhanced with our finest technology, trained from birth to kill efficiently. No species has ever successfully resisted them. Sarah's crew formed a defensive circle around her, weapons drawn but looking pitifully small against the massive aliens. Marcus stepped in front of his captain even though they all knew it was hopeless. If you surrender now, the Admiral offered, your deaths will be quick and painless. This is more mercy than most species receive. Sarah looked at her crew. These were good people who had volunteered for a mission of peace and exploration. They deserved better than to die in an alien trap. But as she met each of their eyes, she saw the same determination she felt in her own heart. Humans might be smaller and weaker than these engineered monsters, but they were not going to surrender without a fight. Admiral, Sarah said clearly, humanity respectfully declines your offer. Marcus was the first to open fire. The conference chamber erupted into chaos as Marcus Rodriguez opened fire. His plasma pistol sent a bright blue bolt directly into the chest of the nearest apex hunter. The beam struck the creature's armored skin and scattered harmlessly, leaving only a small burn mark. The hunter looked down at the mark, then back at Marcus with what might have been curiosity. It took a step forward, claws extending from its massive hands. "Scatter!" Marcus shouted to his team. "Make them work for it." The humans broke formation, diving behind overturned chairs and decorative pillars. They had trained for boarding actions and hostile first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared them for enemies this large and powerful. Admiral Vexithera remained seated, watching the battle with clinical interest. This was not a fight, it was a demonstration. She wanted to see how these humans would react when faced with certain death. The first hunter reached Marcus before he could reload his weapon. A massive clawed hand swept toward his head, moving faster than something that size should be able to move. Marcus ducked under the swipe and rolled between the creature's legs, coming up behind it with a combat knife in his hand. The blade found a gap between armored plates at the base of the hunter's neck. Marcus drove it in with all his strength, twisting as he had been trained. Dark blue blood spurted from the wound. The hunter spun around with a roar of pain and anger, backhanding Marcus across the chamber. He hit the wall hard and slumped to the floor, but the knife had done its work. The perfect killing machine stumbled, one hand pressed to its neck wound. Admiral Vexithera sat up straighter in her chair. No one had ever wounded an apex hunter with such a primitive weapon. Across the chamber, engineer Lisa Park had found herself cornered by two hunters. Her small plasma pistol was almost empty, and the creatures were closing in with methodical precision. Behind her, 3 junior crew members huddled against the wall. "Stay behind me," she told them quietly. Then louder she called out to the hunters, "Hey, you ugly bastards. Come and get me." The creatures paused. Their translation implants were having trouble with her tone and word choice. They had never encountered insults delivered with such genuine anger. Lisa used their confusion to check her equipment belt. Standard tools, emergency rations, and there, the portable fusion battery she had been using to power her scanner, not designed as a weapon, but carrying enough energy to run her equipment for a week. She began rewiring the battery's safety systems as the hunters resumed their advance. Her hands moved quickly, connecting circuits that were never meant to be connected. If she did this wrong, nothing would happen. If she did it right, "Tell my family I love them," she whispered to the crew members behind her. Then she smiled at the approaching hunters. "And tell these things that humans don't go." Quietly, she triggered the modified battery just as the first hunter reached for her. The explosion vaporized a 10-foot section of the chamber wall and sent both hunters flying backward. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Lisa Park except her service badge, melted but still recognizable. The battle continued for 18 more minutes. The humans used every trick they could think of. They set traps with their equipment. They coordinated their fire to target the same weak points Marcus had found. When they ran out of ammunition, they used improvised clubs and knives. Most importantly, they never stopped fighting, even when injured, even when outnumbered, even when facing certain death. They kept looking for ways to hurt their enemies. Commander Park managed to blind a hunter by throwing acid from the ship's cleaning supplies into its eyes. Ensign Williams used her belt to strangle one of the creatures until it passed out from lack of oxygen. Every human victory came at a terrible cost, but they were victories nonetheless. When the last human finally fell, 3 apex hunters lay dead, and 2 more were seriously wounded. Admiral Vexithera stared at the aftermath in shock. In 3,000 years of Dominion expansion, she had never seen anything like it. "Impossible," she whispered. Her aide approached carefully, stepping over human bodies and pools of blue blood. "Admiral, the medical teams are treating our wounded, but how did they manage this? They had no enhanced genetics, no advanced weapons, no combat implants." Vexithara stood and walked to where Captain Chen's body lay. The human woman had died trying to reach a fallen crew member, a medkit in her hands instead of a weapon. Even in her final moments, she'd been trying to save others rather than herself. "They fought like cornered animals," the aide continued. "No strategy, no tactical doctrine, just random violence." "No," Vexithera said slowly. "Look at the pattern. They coordinated their attacks to support each other. They sacrificed themselves to protect the wounded. They adapted their tactics as the battle progressed." She pointed to the melted section of wall where Lisa Park had died. That explosion was not random violence. It was a calculated decision to eliminate multiple enemies at the cost of one life. She activated her personal communicator. Medical team, I want complete autopsies of all human bodies. I want to know everything about their physiology, their technology, their equipment, and I want a detailed analysis of our hunter casualties. How exactly did primitive weapons penetrate their armor? Admiral, her aide said carefully, surely this was just an unusual outcome. One lucky engagement against an unprepared enemy. Vexthara looked around the chamber at the destruction these 12 humans had caused. Perhaps we have underestimated this species. She paused, thinking of Captain Chen's final words about friendship and cooperation. Send a message to the Third Fleet. We are going to visit their home world. Standard pacification force, Admiral? No. Vexthara's eyes remained fixed on the blood-stained battlefield. Full battle fleet. I want to see what happens when we face more of these humans. And I want to understand how a species this physically weak managed to kill our perfect warriors. As the cleanup crews began removing bodies and debris, Admiral Vexthara found herself thinking about the human woman who had died trying to heal instead of harm. In her 3 centuries of military service, she had never seen an enemy prioritize saving lives over taking them. It made no tactical sense. It violated every principle of efficient warfare. It was the behavior of a weak species that should have been extinct long ago. So why did it make her feel uneasy? The Dominion had built an empire on the principle that strength was the only thing that mattered. The strong survived, the weak perished, and the galaxy belonged to those who could take it by force. It was a simple truth that had served them well for millennia, but these humans had just proven that sometimes the weak could hurt the strong. They had shown that courage and determination could overcome genetic perfection and advanced technology. They had died fighting, and in dying they had done the impossible. Admiral Vexthara ordered her fleet to set course for Earth. She told herself it was just another conquest, another primitive world to be absorbed into the Dominion. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered that this might be different. This might be the first real test the Dominion had faced in 1,000 years. General Patricia Hayes stood in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at displays that showed the approaching alien fleet. 237 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They would reach Earth in 72 hours. Message from the Endeavour came through 6 months ago, reported Colonel Santos, her intelligence chief.
Captain Chen's final transmission told us what we're facing.
These Dominion forces have conquered hundreds of worlds. Patricia nodded grimly. 6 months ago, humanity had been preparing for peaceful first contact with alien civilization. Now they were preparing for a war they had almost no chance of winning. Status report on planetary defenses. All nuclear weapons have been converted to ship-to-ship missiles. The orbital platforms are armed with railguns and particle beams. We've got hidden weapon stations throughout the asteroid belt and around Mars colony. Santos paused. It won't be enough, General. Their smallest ships outgun our biggest ones. What about the civilian evacuations? 90% of Earth's population has been moved to underground shelters or off-world colonies. Major cities are empty except for military personnel and volunteers. Santos pulled up another display showing refugee movements. The Mars and Moon colonies refuse to evacuate. They're staying to fight. Patricia felt proud of humanity's response, even as she worried about their chances. When faced with extinction, people had not panicked or surrendered. They had worked together with remarkable speed and efficiency. Old enemies had become allies overnight. Resources had been shared freely between nations. It was humanity at its best facing humanity's darkest hour. What about Project Prometheus? Dr. Kim's team finished their work yesterday. Every major city, military base, and industrial center has been rigged with fusion charges. If the aliens want Earth, they'll get a radioactive wasteland. Patricia stared at the tactical display. The approaching fleet looked like a swarm of deadly insects growing larger every hour. Humanity's defenders looked pitiful by comparison. A few hundred ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. But they had one advantage the aliens might not expect. Humanity had spent thousands of years learning how to fight against impossible odds. They knew how to turn desperation into determination. Send the final message to all commands, she ordered. Execute Spartan Protocol. Across the solar system, human forces began implementing the most desperate military strategy ever conceived. There would be no retreats, no surrenders, no prisoners taken. Every human ship, every weapon platform, every individual soldier would fight until destroyed. The goal was not victory. It was to make the aliens pay such a terrible price that they would think twice before attacking another human world. The first engagement came at the edge of the asteroid belt. Mining ships that had been converted into improvised warships emerged from hiding places among the rocks. They opened fire on the Dominion fleet with mining lasers and jury-rigged missiles. Admiral Vexithera watched the attack from her flagship's bridge with growing confusion. The human vessels were attacking in small groups, hitting and running rather than forming proper battle lines. Their weapons were primitive and their ships were slow, but they fought with suicidal determination. "These are not military vessels," her tactical officer reported. "Analysis indicates civilian mining and transport ships with improvised weapons." "Where is their real fleet?" Vexthara demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. These appear to be their primary defenders." A human ship rammed directly into one of the Dominion cruisers, detonating its cargo hold full of nuclear explosives. The cruiser's shields absorbed most of the blast, but the impact damaged its weapon systems. "They're using their ships as weapons," the tactical officer said with disbelief. "Deliberate suicide attacks." More human vessels emerged from asteroid hiding places, each one piloted by volunteers who had no intention of returning home. They struck at the Dominion fleet like angry wasps, too small to do serious damage but too numerous to ignore. By the time the fleet reached Mars, Vexithara had lost 16 ships to these suicide attacks. The humans had lost over 100 vessels, but they showed no signs of stopping. Mars orbit was defended by the colonial fleet, ships built for exploration and terraforming, now armed with whatever weapons the colonists could manufacture. The battle was brief but fierce. Human ships fought in coordinated groups, using their knowledge of local space to set ambushes and traps. When the New Horizon was surrounded by 3 Dominion destroyers, her captain transmitted a final message: "Tell Earth we held the line." Then she flew directly into Mars's atmosphere, taking 2 enemy ships with her as her fusion drive overloaded. The Mars colonies themselves presented a new kind of challenge for the Dominion forces. When the Apex Hunters landed to occupy the terraforming domes, they found the settlements had been converted into fortresses. Every corridor was a kill zone. Every room was booby-trapped. Worse, the human defenders seemed to know exactly how to fight the perfect warriors. They had studied the battle reports from the Endeavor and learned from every engagement. They knew where the hunters' armor was weakest, how fast they could move, what their tactical implants could and could not detect. Children who had grown up in the low gravity of Mars used it to their advantage, leaping from walls and ceilings to attack from unexpected angles. Scientists turned laboratory equipment into weapons. Even the elderly colonists contributed, using their intimate knowledge of the settlement layouts to guide ambushes. The hunters eventually took the colonies, but the cost was higher than expected. Admiral Vexthara studied the casualty reports with growing unease. They were still winning every battle, but each victory felt less decisive than the last. Earth itself was protected by a web of orbital platforms and hidden weapon stations. As the Dominion fleet approached, the planet appeared to be heavily defended. Energy beams and missile salvos erupted from dozens of positions around the globe. But when the hunters landed in the major cities, they found them empty. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all abandoned except for the booby traps and radiation alarms that warned of nuclear charges hidden throughout the urban landscape. "They've abandoned their world rather than let us have it," Vexthara's aide reported. "Intelligence suggests the entire population has retreated to underground facilities or off-world colonies." "Then we will dig them out," Vexithara replied, but her confidence was shaken. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. Species either fought and died or surrendered and served. They did not evacuate their entire civilization and rig their homeworld to explode. The underground war that followed was unlike anything in Dominion history. Human defenders emerged from hidden tunnels to strike at hunter patrols, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They used the planet's own infrastructure against the invaders, flooding tunnels with toxic gas, causing electrical systems to overload, turning the very ground into a weapon. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be learning and adapting faster than the Dominion could respond. Every encounter taught them more about hunter capabilities and weaknesses. Information was shared instantly across their defensive network. Tactics that worked in one location were immediately adopted everywhere else. 3 months after the invasion began, Admiral Vexithara stood in the ruins of what had once been the Pentagon, studying reports from across the planet. Earth was conquered, but it felt nothing like victory. "Final casualty count, Admiral," her aide said quietly. "We have lost over 8,000 Apex hunters and 43 capital ships. Human losses are estimated in the millions, but precise numbers are impossible to determine." Vexithara stared at the numbers in shock. 8,000 hunters. In the entire Karathi campaign, they had lost fewer than 300. These humans, with their primitive weapons and weak bodies, had killed more Dominion warriors than any enemy in living memory. "And we still have not found their leadership or their main population centers," the aide continued. They could continue this resistance indefinitely. Outside the ruined building, Vexithara could hear the sound of distant explosions. Somewhere in the city, humans were still fighting. After 3 months of occupation, they were still fighting. She was beginning to understand that conquering humanity might be more difficult than conquering their planet. 3 years after the conquest of Earth, Admiral Vexithara received the message she had been dreading. The rebellion on Karathi Prime had succeeded. The world the Dominion had conquered just months before meeting humanity was now free, its population rising up with weapons and tactics that looked suspiciously familiar. "How many worlds?" she asked her intelligence officer. 47 confirmed uprisings, Admiral, all using similar tactics. Coordinated small unit attacks, improvised explosives, strikes against infrastructure followed by immediate withdrawal. "They're calling it guerrilla warfare." Vexithara recognized the patterns. It was exactly how the humans fought. Somehow their methods were spreading across the galaxy faster than the Dominion could respond. "What about the hunter production facilities? Running at only 60% capacity, Admiral. We've lost too many experienced warriors, and the new ones are having difficulty with these unconventional tactics." That was the heart of the problem. The Apex hunters had been designed to fight traditional wars against conventional enemies. They excelled at direct combat, frontal assaults, and overwhelming force. But they struggled against enemies who refused to fight fair, who used the environment as a weapon, who struck without warning and vanished like ghosts. The humans had taught the galaxy a new way to fight. Worse, they had proven it could work. "Status report on the Sol system?" The intelligence officer hesitated. "Ongoing resistance activities on all worlds, Admiral. Earth's underground networks remain active despite 3 years of occupation. Mars colony has been retaken twice by human forces. The asteroid belt is effectively a no-go zone for our supply ships. And the human leadership? Still unlocated. They appear to have established a government in exile somewhere in the outer system, possibly using mobile command ships. We intercept their communications regularly, but cannot trace their source." Vexithara turned to the tactical display that dominated her ready room. Red markers showed Dominion forces under attack across dozens of worlds. Yellow indicated areas of uncertain control. Green zones, areas of complete Dominion dominance, had shrunk dramatically over the past year. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia was starting to crack. "Bring me the psychological profiles of captured human prisoners," she ordered, the files made for disturbing reading. Humans who had been captured refused to provide intelligence even under torture. They organized resistance cells inside prison camps. Most disturbing of all, they seemed genuinely puzzled by questions about their species' surrender. One interview transcript particularly troubled her. A captured human engineer named Johnson had been asked when his people would accept their place in the Dominion hierarchy. "Accept?" he had replied. "Why would we accept slavery? You killed our friends, destroyed our homes, and tried to wipe out our entire species. Did you really think we'd just forgive and forget?" When pressed about the futility of continued resistance, Johnson had laughed. "Futile, we're winning. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we're winning. Every day you occupy our worlds is another day you're not conquering new ones. Every hunter you lose fighting us is one less hunter you can send against some other innocent species. We're the stick in your wheel, the sand in your gears, and we'll keep fighting until you break or we die." The interviewer had pointed out that humanity could not defeat the entire Dominion military. "Don't need to defeat you," Johnson had replied. "Just need to make you bleed until you decide we're more trouble than we're worth." That was the strategy, Vexithara realized. The humans were not trying to win a conventional victory. They were trying to make conquest so expensive that the Dominion would abandon its expansion, rather than continue paying the price. And it was working. A priority message interrupted her thoughts. The communication came from High Command on the Dominion homeworld, marked with the highest security codes. Admiral Vexithara, you are ordered to report to the Council of Dominance immediately. Bring all files related to the human situation. She arrived at the Dominion capital 48 hours later, traveling through space that had once been completely secure. Now her ship required escort vessels to protect against human raiders who seemed to appear from nowhere, strike hard, and vanish before reinforcements could respond. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful members of Zeltharian society. Military commanders, genetic engineers, political leaders, all of them demanding answers for the crisis that was tearing their empire apart. Explain to us, demanded Supreme Chancellor Krexthar, how a species of weak mammals has brought the Dominion to the edge of collapse. Vexithara activated her presentation displays. The humans have introduced a new form of warfare that our strategies were not designed to counter. They fight not to win territory or destroy our fleets, but to inflict maximum casualties at minimum cost to themselves. Then why not simply exterminate them? Asked General Quindar. Sterilize their worlds and be done with it. We tried that approach early in the occupation. The humans responded by accelerating their guerrilla campaign and began teaching their methods to other species. Every act of retaliation against civilians resulted in increased resistance activities. So we are being defeated by our own mercy? The Chancellor's voice dripped with sarcasm. We are being defeated by our assumptions, Vexithara replied carefully. We assumed that conquest meant controlling territory. The humans have shown that a determined population can make territory worthless to its occupiers. We assumed that superior force would guarantee victory. The humans have proven that superior motivation can overcome superior force. She brought up casualty figures and resource expenditure charts. In 3 years of fighting humanity, we have lost more apex hunters than in the previous 3 decades of expansion combined. Our ship production cannot keep pace with losses. Our recruitment programs cannot replace experienced warriors fast enough. And the rebellion spreads to other worlds because of human influence? Correct. Somehow they are sharing their tactical knowledge across the galaxy. Species that have never communicated with each other are using identical resistance methods. It appears that human survivors have established training camps on multiple worlds, teaching others how to fight us effectively. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Dominion had created their worst nightmare, an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means and was actively teaching others to resist. Supreme Chancellor Krexthar spoke slowly. What do you recommend, Admiral? Vexithara had spent months preparing for this moment. We have 2 options. First, we can commit our entire military to the complete extermination of humanity and every species they have contacted. This will require decades of warfare and will likely cost us most of our fleet. And the second option, we negotiate. The word fell into the chamber like a bomb. Several council members began speaking at once, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. The Dominion did not negotiate. The Dominion conquered. Explain, the Chancellor commanded. The humans have demonstrated that they cannot be conquered by force alone, but their goal appears to be survival of their species, not destruction of ours. If we offer them their independence in exchange for an end to their resistance activities, you are suggesting surrender to a primitive species? General Quindar's voice was dangerous. I am suggesting pragmatism, Vexthara replied. The current situation is unsustainable. We can continue this war until both our civilizations are destroyed, or we can find a way to coexist. The debate that followed lasted for hours. In the end, the Council voted to authorize limited negotiations with human representatives. Not surrender, they insisted, but a strategic cessation of hostilities. Vexithara was given the task of making contact with the human leadership. As her ship departed the Dominion capital, she found herself wondering if this was what defeat felt like. The galaxy's most lethal empire had challenged humanity expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that refuses to accept defeat. The humans had not destroyed the Dominion with superior technology or overwhelming force. They had done something far more devastating. They had shown the galaxy that the mighty could fall, that the perfect could bleed, and that freedom was worth any price. In teaching others how to resist, humanity had lit a fire that would burn across the stars for generations to come.